Local governments in Minnesota want to take action to become more energy efficient and mitigate climate change. However, they often lack the adequate information and tools for energy planning. The Minnesota Local Government Project for Energy Planning, also known as logopep, is working to fill this void. A group of experts from the private, nonprofit, and government sectors have joined efforts to develop a set of tools to help local governments in their energy planning. Right now, the tools are being developed and the team is gathering feedback from pilot cities. We spoke with Professor Hari Osofsky from the University of Minnesota Law School and director of the Energy Transition Lab, who explained why logopep is important.
When you try to think about how do we address the energy transition that needs to happen and the problem of climate change in particular, it's important to remember that estimates are that around 70% of emissions are coming out of cities. And so thinking in creative ways about how you help cities reduce their emissions is incredibly important. The difficulty, of course, is that when you start to think about that from a legal perspective, that's not something you can actually accomplish through top-down federal policy. A lot of the decisions that impact how much cities emit are local land use planning decisions of various forms. And so part of what this kind of a project is about is trying to find ways of working with cities within their own powers to look at creative ways of moving forward.
We wanted to hear the perspective of cities in Minnesota. How exactly can the logopep team help Minnesota cities? We visited the city of Eden Prairie, where we spoke with Aurora Yeager, who is the administration intern working directly with the logopep project.
We were accepted into the logopep, and ever since then it's kind of been the idea that we already knew we had been working on a long time for Sustainable Eden Prairie, and the idea was to kind of participate in logopep to get an idea of, how we can get clean energy planning and resources like that, use that to funnel into our Sustainable Eden Prairie initiative, which funnels into our comprehensive plan. So kind of using them all together as a vehicle for how to move clean energy forward.
We also visited the city of St. Louis Park, where we spoke with two staff members, Shannon Pinch and Sean Walter. They gave us their perspective about how logopep can help their energy planning.
Because we are about to embark on a comprehensive planning process, and because we just recently passed an energy action plan as well as a climate action plan that we're working on. That was a resolution that recently passed. And because of the comprehensive planning process and interest in solar and a whole lot of other things that are really bubbling up right now, we thought it'd be good to participate to learn what these tools, to not only inform the tools, but learn what these tools might look like and how we might be able to use them going forward.
What are these tools that logopep is developing? One is a wedge diagram. This will allow cities to estimate the impacts of different actions to reduce their energy consumption and how to achieve targets.
I'm looking forward to the wedge tool being completed so that can be directly tied to our climate action planning efforts and what's going to get us there, both as a city and as a community. Then that may influence what I say we need to be focusing on as a city, and then that might lead into what we might highlight and focus on more heavily in the comprehensive plan, or at least be able to talk about it in a smart way, that it is tied to certain initiatives.
Another tool is an energy planning template that helps the cities with the language of policy and effective ways to incorporate energy in their comprehensive planning. The comprehensive plan is the document in which cities establish the ground rules for their urban planning.
So the city is finding that, at least so far, that the energy planning template is going to be the most helpful for us as we're trying to plan for our comprehensive plan, as we're trying to lay out possible work that we could do through Sustainable Eden Prairie. It's really important for us to establish those existing conditions, because for the most part, we haven't either had the time or the knowledge is segmented across different people in the city that we don't really know what is our total energy usage, or we don't know what our total water usage. So we're kind of taking some of the ideas in that toolkit and using them for all areas of Sustainable Eden Prairie to kind of outline, where do we even start, where are we now? That's kind of most important for us to then identify, okay, if this is where we are, where could we reasonably go?
The third tool is a set of case studies of exemplar cities. Professor Osofsky is the main leader of this tool.
the goal of my piece of the project, which is doing the case studies of cities, looking at exemplar cities, is to create a diverse set of cities of different city types. We're also trying to make sure it's a bipartisan group, so about half Democrat, half Republican, and the idea, and cities that are doing different kinds of things well. And the idea behind that is that cities are most likely to be able to learn from cities that have things in common with them. And so we want to create some models that aren't just looking at, here's a laundry list of things cities can do, but here's things that cities of this particular type have done well that other cities can learn from.
One of the aspects that we talked about is that, right or wrong, we always are looking for very good comparisons to our community. You know, how do we bring this to our community so that people don't think, okay, we're looking at even Minneapolis, which is a much larger city with much different resources than we have. You know, how do we compare ourselves to a Maplewood, right? Someone who's maybe more equal in size. Maybe it's not a first-ring suburb, but it's, you know, near that. Just gives us an opportunity to say, you know, judge ourselves and our progress, and also look at, oh, that's a really innovative idea that we hadn't really considered before, and they've taken it much farther than we've, you know, even considered.
Local governments will play a key role in climate mitigation and adaptation. Proper energy planning is the right place to start.
When we think about the problem of climate change and how we get at it, and when we think about the major transitions that are happening in our energy system, only partially related to climate change, often there's a tendency of people to do two things. One is to focus on the large scale. They talk a lot about international negotiations. They talk a lot about national policy. The other thing is they tend to focus on what divides us. They tend to talk about these issues as highly politicized things that people are fighting across political lines about. But what's really important to recognize about energy transition is that an effective energy transition is happening at multiple scales, and that part of really thinking systematically about how we move forward on these issues is to look not just at those large scales, but also at their smaller scales, because in the aggregate, these smaller scales really matter.
Thanks for watching.